The crack of his fist against my daughter's jaw echoed through our dining room like a gunshot on Christmas morning. I watched Sarah's head snap to the side, her body crumpling against the wall as our family's laughter died in an instant. But what froze my blood wasn't just Derek's violence. It was his brother Marcus, sitting across the table with a wine glass in his hand, who leaned back and said with a cold smile, "Finally, someone had to teach her to shut up." In that moment, as my daughter's hand trembled against her bleeding lip and my wife gasped in horror, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I had only one number to dial, a number I hadn't called in 15 years. Derek had no idea what he'd just set in motion. "My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm 67 years old, and I spent 30 years as an insurance investigator before I retired to what I thought would be peaceful golden years in Portland, Oregon. I thought I'd seen everything in my career. Staged accidents, fraudulent claims, elaborate schemes, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for watching my own son-in-law put his hands on my daughter during what should have been a joyful Christmas dinner. Let me back up. Sarah is my only child. She married Derek Thompson 3 years ago, and I'll admit, I never liked the man. There was something in his eyes that didn't match his smile, something calculating. My wife, Margaret, told me I was being overprotective, that every father thinks no man is good enough for his daughter. Maybe she was right, but a father's instinct is a powerful thing, and mine had been screaming warnings since the day they met. The Christmas dinner had been Margaret's idea. She wanted the whole family together. Sarah and Derek, Derek's brother Marcus and his wife Jennifer, my sister and her husband. We'd spent the morning opening presents, drinking eggnog, pretending everything was fine. But I'd noticed things. The way Sarah flinched when Derek raised his hand to adjust his collar, the long sleeves she wore despite the heat from the fireplace, the way she excused herself to the bathroom 3 times before we even sat down to eat. We were halfway through dinner when it happened. Sarah had made a comment about Derek's new truck, something innocent about the monthly payment being high. I saw his jaw clench. I saw his knuckles go white around his fork. And then he stood up. "You want to talk about money?" His voice was low, dangerous. "You, who haven't worked a real day since we got married?" Sarah looked down at her plate. "Derek, I didn't mean—" "Shut your mouth." He moved toward her chair. I started to rise, but Margaret grabbed my arm. "Robert, don't make a scene." That's when Derek grabbed Sarah by her hair and yanked her to her feet. She cried out, her hands flying to her head, and then he hit her. Not a slap, a closed fist punch to her face that sent her sprawling into the wall, knocking over a shelf of Margaret's cherished Christmas decorations. The room exploded in chaos. My sister screamed. Jennifer jumped up from her chair. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. But Marcus, Derek's older brother, just sat there with that sick smile and said those words that would haunt me. Finally, someone had to teach her to shut up. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd kept in my contacts for 15 years, even though I swore I'd never use it again. Jack Morrison, former FBI agent. Now a private investigator who specialized in cases others wouldn't touch. We'd worked together on a massive fraud case back in 2008, and he'd told me if I ever needed anything at all, to call. The phone rang twice. Jack's gravelly voice answered. "Mitchell, that you? I need you at my house. Now. Bring whoever you trust." I gave him my address. "What's happening?" I looked at Derek, who was now standing over Sarah as she cowered against the wall, blood dripping from her lip onto her white sweater. I looked at Marcus, still sitting calmly, as if nothing unusual had happened. "Domestic violence. In progress. And Jack, I think there's more to this. On my way. Keep everyone there. Don't let anyone leave." I hung up. Derek was staring at me now, his face red with rage. "Who did you call, old man?" "Someone who's going to have a very interesting conversation with you," I said quietly. I moved to Sarah's side, helping her to her feet. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "It's okay, honey. It's going to be okay." Derek laughed. A harsh, ugly sound. "You think calling someone is going to change anything? This is between me and my wife. This is my business." "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite the fury burning in my chest, The moment you put your hands on her in my house, you made it my business. Marcus finally stood up. He was bigger than Derek, broader in the shoulders. Mr. Mitchell, I think you're overreacting. Derek and Sarah have their issues. Like any couple, sometimes things get heated. Things get heated, I repeated. Is that what you call a grown man punching his wife in the face? I call it none of your concern, Marcus said, his tone shifting from pleasant to threatening. And I suggest you put that phone away and let this family handle family business. I looked at him more closely then. The expensive watch, the custom suit he'd worn to Christmas dinner, the way he carried himself with an authority that didn't match his supposed job as a car salesman. Something clicked in my investigator's brain. How long has this been going on? I asked Sarah quietly. She wouldn't look at me. Dad, please. How long? A year, she whispered. Maybe longer. My heart shattered. A year. My daughter had been living in hell for a year, and I'd been too blind to see it clearly, too willing to believe her excuses about being clumsy, about walking into doors, about falling downstairs. Margaret had moved to Sarah's other side, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. My sister was on her phone, probably calling 911, though I'd asked Jack to come first for a reason. If this was what I suspected, we needed someone who could see the bigger picture. Derek was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. This is ridiculous. Sarah, tell them. Tell them you're fine. Tell them we just had a little argument. Sarah said nothing. Sarah, Derek's voice rose. Tell them. She doesn't have to tell us anything, I said. We saw what we saw. That's when Derek made his second mistake. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Yeah, it's me. We have a problem. The old man's making noise. You need to get over here. He paused, listening. I don't care what you're doing. Get here, now. He hung up and smiled at me. You want to make this complicated, Mr. Mitchell? Fine. Let's make it complicated. 20 minutes later, Jack Morrison arrived. He didn't come alone. He brought 2 associates, both former law enforcement, and a woman I recognized as a domestic violence advocate he often worked with. They entered through my front door without knocking, badges already out. Derek's face went pale. Who the hell are you? Jack Morrison, private investigator. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Mitchell. Jack's eyes swept the room, taking in everything. The broken decorations, Sarah's swelling face, the defensive positions everyone had taken. Anyone want to tell me what happened here? This is a private residence, Marcus said. You have no authority. Actually, I was invited by the homeowner, which gives me every right to be here. Jack turned to Sarah. Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need medical attention? Sarah looked at me, then at Derek, then back at Jack. I saw the moment she made her decision, the moment she chose truth over fear. He hit me, she said, her voice small but clear. My husband hit me. Jack nodded. I'm going to need everyone to stay right where they are. I've got officers from Portland PD on their way. He looked at Derek. You put your hands on her? Derek's jaw clenched. This is between me and my wife. Not anymore. It's not. Jack pulled out a small digital recorder. Mr. Mitchell, you witnessed the assault? I did. So did everyone else in this room. Jack turned to Marcus. And you are? Derek's brother, and I'm advising him not to say another word without a lawyer present. Smart, Jack said. But here's the thing. I don't need him to talk. I've got multiple witnesses to assault. That's enough to bring charges. He looked at me. But you said you thought there was more? I nodded. Call it 30 years of investigator's instinct. Something's not right here. The money, the behavior, the way these two are connected. I gestured at Derek and Marcus. I want to know what they're into. Jack's eyes sharpened. He'd learned to trust my instincts over the years we'd worked together. All right, let's start simple. Derek Thompson, what do you do for a living? I'm in sales, Derek said tightly. What kind of sales? Various things. And you, Marcus? Car sales. Uh-huh. Jack pulled out his phone and made a quiet call. I couldn't hear what he said, but I knew he was running background checks, looking into financials, pulling strings he'd cultivated over decades in law enforcement. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They separated us all, taking statements. A female officer sat with Sarah, documenting her injuries, photographing the bruising that was already blooming across her cheek and jaw. Another officer talked to Derek, who had finally shut up on Marcus's advice. Margaret clung to my arm. "Robert, what's happening?" "Justice," I said simply. "Finally." But I knew this was just the beginning. As I watched Jack work, making calls, coordinating with the officers, I remembered something Derek had said on the phone. "You need to get over here." Who had he called? Who was coming? The answer arrived 30 minutes later. A man in an expensive suit, carrying a briefcase, with the look of someone who'd done this too many times. "I'm Richard Chen, attorney for Derek Thompson. My client will not be making any further statements." Jack raised an eyebrow. "That was fast. Almost like you were on standby." Chen didn't respond, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. Yeah, this attorney had been waiting for a call. This wasn't his first time cleaning up Derek's messes. The police arrested Derek on assault charges. They read him his rights, cuffed him, and led him out of my house. As he passed Sarah, he hissed, "You're going to regret this." One of the officers immediately added intimidation of a witness to his charges. Marcus started to leave, but Jack blocked his path. "I'd stick around if I were you. I've got some questions." "Am I being detained?" "Not yet. But the night's young." After the police left with Derek, Jack sat down with me in my study. Margaret was upstairs with Sarah, helping her clean up and pack a bag. There was no way my daughter was going back to that house tonight, or ever, if I had anything to say about it. "Talk to me, Robert," Jack said. "What's your gut telling you?" I leaned back in my chair, thinking through everything I'd observed over the past 3 years. Derek doesn't work regular hours. He's got expensive tastes. New truck every year, designer clothes, but his supposed sales job shouldn't cover that lifestyle. Sarah mentioned once that he was helping people with insurance claims. Jack's expression darkened. "What kind of help?" She didn't know details. He shut her down whenever she asked questions. "But Jack, I know insurance fraud when I smell it. And if Derek's running something, Marcus is in it too. Did you see that watch? That's a $50,000 Patek Philippe, on a car salesman's salary." "Exactly." Jack pulled out his laptop. "Let me make some calls. I've got a buddy at the insurance fraud division. If these guys are dirty, there'll be whispers." While Jack worked, I went upstairs to check on Sarah. I found her sitting on her childhood bed, holding her old teddy bear, looking about 12 years old instead of 30. Margaret sat beside her, stroking her hair. "Dad," Sarah said when she saw me, "I'm so sorry." I sat down on her other side. "Honey, you have nothing to be sorry for. I should have told you. I should have left him the first time he—" Her voice broke. "The first time?" My stomach dropped. "How many times has this happened?" She looked down at her hands. I stopped counting. Margaret made a sound like a wounded animal. I felt rage, hot and fierce, burning through my chest, but I kept my voice gentle. "Tell me everything, Sarah, from the beginning." And she did. It spilled out of her like poison being drained from a wound. How Derek had been charming at first, attentive, loving. How the first time he grabbed her arm too hard, he'd cried and apologized and sworn it would never happen again. How it escalated slowly. A shove, a slap, cruel words that cut deeper than any blow. "He said no one would believe me," she whispered. "He said his family had connections, that if I ever told anyone, he'd make sure I looked like the crazy one. And Marcus, he was always there, backing Derek up, telling me I was too sensitive, that I needed to toughen up. Did Marcus ever hurt you?" "No, but he watched. Sometimes when Derek would, when things got bad, Marcus would be there, not stopping it, just watching. It was almost worse than if he'd done it himself." I exchanged a look with Margaret over Sarah's head. This was sicker than I'd thought. "There's something else," Sarah said quietly. I didn't understand it, but Derek and Marcus, they had these meetings. Late at night, in our basement, men would come over, people I'd never met. They'd talk for hours. Derek told me to stay upstairs, to never come down when they were meeting. Did you ever hear what they talked about? Once, I was on the stairs, and I heard them talking about someone's accident, about how the claim went through, about splitting the money. And then someone said something about the next one, about making sure the injuries looked real this time. My blood ran cold. Insurance fraud. I'd been right. But this sounded bigger than simple false claims. This sounded organized. I went back downstairs to find Jack on his third phone call. When he hung up, his face was grim. "Your instincts were dead on," he said. "The insurance fraud division has had their eye on a ring operating in the Portland area for the past 2 years. Staged accidents, false injury claims, billing for medical treatments that never happened. They've suspected there was an organized group behind it, but they couldn't get anyone to talk. Everyone involved was too scared. Let me guess. Derek and Marcus Thompson are on their radar, right at the top of the list. They've been tracking a pattern of suspicious claims all linked back to the same medical providers, the same attorneys, the same investigators. And your son-in-law's name keeps popping up as the victim or the coordinator. How much money are we talking about? Conservative estimate? North of $2 million over the past 3 years. Could be more." I let out a low whistle. So when Derek hit Sarah tonight, he wasn't just an abusive husband. He was a criminal protecting his operation. And I'd bet money that the reason he's kept Sarah isolated and scared is because he knew if she ever talked, if she ever felt safe enough to share what she'd seen and heard, it could bring the whole thing down. We looked at each other, and I saw the same thought in Jack's eyes that was in mine. We had a chance here, a chance to not just get Derek on assault charges, but to dismantle whatever operation he and Marcus were running. "I need to make a call," Jack said. "We're going to need the FBI on this." Over the next 3 hours, my house became an unofficial command center. FBI agents arrived, followed by insurance fraud investigators, followed by the district attorney's office. They interviewed Sarah, gently at first, then with growing excitement as she recounted every detail she could remember about those basement meetings, about the men who came and went, about the papers she'd seen with claim numbers and dollar amounts. They interviewed me about my observations of Derek's lifestyle. They interviewed Margaret about the times Sarah had shown up with injuries. They even interviewed my sister, who remembered Derek making a joke once about knowing how to work the system. By midnight, they had enough for a warrant, not just for Derek's arrest on assault charges, but for a full investigation into insurance fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. They raided Derek and Sarah's house, seizing computers, files, burner phones, everything. They brought Marcus in for questioning. Without Derek there to intimidate him, Marcus's wife Jennifer started talking. She'd been scared too, she said. Scared of what Marcus and Derek were involved in. Scared of what would happen if she said anything. She'd seen the way Derek treated Sarah and knew that if she spoke up, Marcus might do the same to her. The next day, the investigation exploded. They found evidence of at least 50 fraudulent insurance claims totaling over $3 million. They found a network of corrupt doctors who signed off on fake injuries. They found attorneys who filed the claims knowing they were false. They found investigators who wrote bogus reports. And at the center of it all were Derek and Marcus Thompson, running the whole operation. But here's what nobody expected to find. What made this case go from big to massive? Derek and Marcus weren't just defrauding insurance companies. They were also staging actual accidents, recruiting desperate people to deliberately get hurt in car crashes, slip and falls, workplace incidents, paying them a fraction of the claim money while keeping the rest. And in at least 2 cases, those staged accidents had gone wrong. People had been hurt worse than planned. One man was permanently paralyzed. A woman had died. When they told me that, I had to sit down. My daughter had been married to a man who was essentially running a criminal enterprise that had gotten someone killed. The thought made me physically ill. Sarah took it even harder. "I lived with him," she kept saying. "I slept next to him. I didn't know. I didn't know he was capable of that." "You couldn't have known," Margaret told her. "He made sure you couldn't." The district attorney came to my house personally to talk to Sarah. "Miss Thompson," he said, "your testimony is going to be crucial in this case. We need you to be willing to testify about everything you saw and heard, about the meetings, about Derek's behavior, about the control and intimidation he used to keep you silent. Can you do that?" Sarah looked at me. I took her hand. "It's your choice, honey. No one can make you do this." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Yes, I'll testify. Because if I don't, he'll do this to someone else. He'll hurt someone else, and I can't live with that. The trial took 8 months to prepare. In that time, Sarah moved back in with me and Margaret. She started therapy. She joined a support group for domestic violence survivors. Slowly, painfully, she began to heal. Derek and Marcus were held without bail, deemed flight risks given the severity of the charges. Their attorney, Richard Chen, was also arrested after investigators discovered he'd been laundering money through fake legal settlements. The whole organization was being systematically dismantled, with dozens of arrests across Oregon and Washington. I watched Sarah grow stronger with each passing day. The scared, broken woman who'd come home that Christmas had been replaced by someone fierce, someone determined. When she walked into that courthouse on the first day of the trial, she held her head high. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. Financial records, wiretapped phone calls, testimony from the recruited accident victims, medical evidence from the people who'd been hurt, and then Sarah took the stand. She testified for 6 hours over 2 days. She told them everything. About the abuse, about the fear, about the basement meetings and the whispered conversations, about Derek's threats and Marcus's cold observation, about the night at Christmas dinner when her father had made one phone call that changed everything. Derek's defense attorney tried to rattle her, suggesting she was making things up, that she was a scorned wife seeking revenge. But Sarah didn't break. She looked that attorney right in the eye and said, "I have the medical records from every time he hit me. I have the photographs my therapist helped me take of bruises I'd hidden for years. I have the testimony of my family who witnessed the violence. The only thing I'm seeking is justice for everyone my husband hurt, including myself." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Derek Thompson was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for insurance fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering, plus an additional 10 years on state charges for assault and domestic violence. Marcus got 20 years. The other members of their organization received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. The civil suits came next. The insurance companies sued to recover their losses. The victims sued for damages. Derek and Marcus lost everything. Their houses, their cars, their assets, all of it was seized and sold to pay restitution. A year after that Christmas dinner, Sarah and I sat on my back porch watching the sunset. She'd started a new job as a victim advocate, helping other domestic violence survivors navigate the legal system. She'd found purpose in her pain. "Dad," she said quietly, "I never thanked you properly for making that call, for believing me, for not giving up." I put my arm around her shoulders. "Honey, I failed you for a year by not seeing what was happening. That phone call was the least I could do." "You didn't fail me," she said firmly. "You saved me. When it mattered most, you didn't hesitate. You acted." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Sarah said, "I got a letter yesterday from one of the women Derek and Marcus recruited for their scam. She thanked me for testifying. She said because of that, she got the courage to report the people who'd manipulated her. She's getting her life back." "That's wonderful," I said. "It is. And it made me realize something. That Christmas dinner, when everything fell apart, that was the beginning of a lot of people getting their lives back. Not just me. All the victims, all the people who were too scared to speak up. One phone call started all of that. I thought about Jack Morrison, who'd responded without question to my call for help. About the FBI agents who'd worked the case tirelessly. About the prosecutor who'd fought for justice. About Margaret and my sister and everyone who'd stood by Sarah when she needed it most. "It wasn't just one phone call," I said. "It was everyone who answered it. Everyone who believed you. Everyone who refused to let Derek and Marcus get away with what they'd done." Sarah nodded. "Still, you made the call. That took courage." I squeezed her shoulder. "You want to know the truth? I wasn't thinking about courage. I was thinking about my little girl, the one who used to sit on my shoulders at the park, who trusted me to keep her safe, and I'd let her down by not seeing what was happening. But I wasn't going to let her down again. Not that night. Not ever." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in a federal prison, Derek Thompson was living with the consequences of his choices. Somewhere in the city, other survivors were finding their voices, standing up, refusing to be silent anymore. And here, on my back porch, my daughter was free, healing, strong. That one phone call hadn't fixed everything. It hadn't erased the pain or the trauma. But it had been the first step on a long road to justice. And sometimes, that's all it takes. One person willing to make the call. One person refusing to look away. One person saying, no more. I'm Robert Mitchell. I'm 67 years old. And that Christmas dinner, when I watched my son-in-law hit my daughter and her brother-in-law smile, I made a choice. I chose action over silence. I chose my daughter's safety over keeping the peace. I chose justice. And I'd make that same choice again in a heartbeat. Because that's what fathers do. That's what decent people do. When you see evil, when you see someone hurting someone you love, you don't turn away. You don't make excuses. You act. You make the call.